What happens when saving a life means surrendering your own? For Kira Dalton, a waitress scraping by in the humid heart of New Orleans, Tuesday night was supposed to be simple. Wipe tables, dodge handsy tourists, pocket enough tips to keep the lights on another week. But when bullets shattered the windows of the Mariner's dock, Simple died in a spray of glass and gunpowder. She saw him stagger through the door, tall, dangerous, bleeding through a white shirt that probably cost more than her rent. His eyes, dark and infinite as a storm over the Gulf, locked onto hers for one impossible heartbeat. Then the gunman raised his weapon. Kira didn't think. She dove. The bullet tore through her side like fire swallowing paper. She collapsed against him, feeling his arm crush around her. His voice, low, accented, trembling with something between rage and terror, cutting through the chaos. "Stay with me," he said, voice low, shaking. "Don't you dare die for me." She wanted to answer, but the air was gone. Her vision tunneled, color leaking from the edges of the world. The last thing she felt was the warmth of his hand against her skin and the promise in his voice. Something dark, dangerous, and heartbreakingly human. She thought it was mercy. It wasn't. It was the beginning of her entrapment. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're ready for another captivating story, go ahead and click subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from. I love knowing how far our stories travel and how many hearts they reach. Your support helps us bring even more thrilling tales your way. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. Now settle in. Let's begin the story. The scent of fried catfish and bourbon-soaked laughter was Kira Dalton's entire universe. The Mariner's dock wasn't fancy. Peeling paint, wobbly tables, regulars who tipped in crumpled singles. But it was hers. 5 nights a week, she smiled through the exhaustion, balanced trays like her life depended on it, and pretended the ache in her feet didn't match the one in her chest. At 28, Kira had learned to live small. Keep your head down. Don't get involved. Survive one shift at a time. It wasn't always like this. Once she'd been the brave one, the sister who walked her little brother home through sketchy neighborhoods, who stood between him and anything that looked like trouble. But courage had a price, and she'd paid it 6 years ago when Malik took a stray bullet meant for someone else. Gang crossfire on a Wednesday afternoon. He was 17. She'd been 3 blocks away, running late from a double shift. That guilt lived in her bones now. A weight she carried between the kitchen and the dining room, between sleep and waking. She'd promised herself she'd never step into the path of violence again. Never play hero. Heroes got buried. That Tuesday started like any other. October rain hammered the bay, turning the Mississippi into a churning mirror of bruised purple sky. The lunch crowd had thinned to a handful of tourists nursing hurricanes by the window. Kira was wiping down the bar, humming along to the old blues station Jerome kept on low when she noticed him. Table 7, corner booth. He sat alone, back to the wall, watching the room like a man who expected trouble. Expensive suit, dark hair slicked back, and eyes. God, those eyes that seemed to see through walls. He didn't look at the menu, didn't smile when she approached. "Coffee, black," he said. His voice was granite wrapped in velvet with an accent that wasn't quite American. She poured. He didn't touch it, just kept watching the door. Something about him felt wrong. Not dangerous in the way drunk tourists got handsy or aggressive. Dangerous like a loaded gun left on a table. She felt it in her stomach. That old instinct her mama used to call knowing. She was refilling waters when the first shot cracked the night open. The sound wasn't immediate. First came the screech of tires, rubber screaming against wet pavement, then the shattering of glass. Close, maybe the bakery across the street. Then the gunshot, sharp and final as a period at the end of a sentence. Kira's body moved before her brain caught up. She dropped the pitcher. It exploded against the floor. Around her, the world became a chorus of screams and scrambling bodies. Tourists dove under tables. Jerome disappeared behind the bar. Through the rain-streaked window, she saw it unfold like a scene from a nightmare. 2 black sedans had boxed in a sleek Maserati at the curb. Men in dark clothes poured out, weapons raised, muzzle flashes lit up the street in violent stutters of light. The man from table 7 was already moving out of his booth, across the floor, toward the door. Another shot punched through the window. The glass spiderwebbed, then cascaded inward in a deadly waterfall. The man in the suit burst through the entrance, blood blooming across his white shirt like a rose opening too fast. He stumbled, caught himself against the doorframe, and his eyes, those impossible storm-dark eyes, found hers through the chaos. For a moment the world stopped. In his gaze, she saw no fear, only cold, calculated fury and something else. Recognition, as if he'd been expecting this, as if he'd been waiting for death and was furious it had finally arrived. Then she saw the gunman step through the shattered window behind him. Kira's heart stopped. The man raised his weapon, arm steady, barrel aimed at the back of the stranger's head. Malik's voice, young and laughing, echoed in her skull. "You're the brave one, Kay. You always were." No, not again. Not while she was standing here, breathing, able to move. Her feet hit the floor before she made the choice. She was running, sprinting across broken glass and spilled drinks. Her white sneakers splashing through puddles of rainwater and blood. The world narrowed to a single point. The man collapsing against the bar and the gun behind him. "Get down!" she screamed. He turned. Shock cracked his controlled expression just for a second as she crashed into him with everything she had. They went down together, his body twisting to catch her fall. She felt the iron-hard muscle beneath the expensive fabric. Smelled sandalwood and gunpowder and something metallic like rain on steel. For one absurd heartbeat, she was pressed against his chest, her cheek against his collarbone, close enough to feel his pulse hammering beneath her ear. Then the bullet found her. The impact was white-hot, a supernova of agony that ripped through her left side and stole the air from her lungs. She gasped or tried to, but nothing came. Just a wet, choking sound. Her body went limp against his. The world tilted sideways. Colors bled into each other. The gunfire faded into something distant and unimportant. She was on the floor. No, she was in his arms. He'd rolled them, his back against the bar, cradling her against his chest. Blood. So much blood spread between them, soaking through her uniform and his shirt until she couldn't tell whose it was. His face was above hers, no longer cold. His expression was fractured, raw, an emotion so savage it didn't have a name. He was pressing his hands against her side, trying to stop the bleeding. His palms were warm. She could feel the tremor in them. "Stay with me," he growled, his voice low and urgent and breaking. "Look at me. Don't you dare close your eyes." She tried. "God!" she tried. But his face kept blurring, doubling, fading. "Stay with me," he said again. And this time it sounded like a prayer. Somewhere beyond the pain, she heard sirens, felt him lift her, felt the rain on her face as he carried her through the shattered door. His heartbeat was a drum against her ear. Her last thought before the darkness swallowed everything was this. Malik, I didn't run this time. I didn't run. And then nothing. Consciousness didn't return all at once. Came in pieces like light filtering through a cracked door. First, sound. Not the beeping of monitors or the echo of hospital corridors. Silence. Deep, expensive silence. The kind that only existed in places where no one needed to raise their voice. Second, scent. Not antiseptic or bleach. Lavender, chamomile, clean linen, and something faintly woody, like aged oak. Third, pain. Dull and distant now, wrapped in gauze and medication, but present. A throb in her left side that pulsed with her heartbeat. Kira opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was wrong. Not acoustic tile, but plaster molding, intricate and antique. A chandelier hung in the center, crystal and gold. Soft light pooling across a room that looked like it belonged in a magazine. She was in a bed, a massive bed. Sheets softer than anything she'd ever touched. And 4 taped expertly to her right arm. Panic hit like ice water. She tried to sit up. The pain in her side screamed, forcing her back against the pillows with a gasp. Easy. His voice came from the shadows. Kira's head snapped toward the sound. He was sitting in an armchair in the corner, dressed now in a simple black t-shirt and dark trousers. His face was clean-shaven, revealing a jaw sharp enough to cut and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Those eyes, whiskey dark and unreadable, watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He stood, moved toward her with a grace that was too quiet, too controlled. "Where am I?" Her voice was a rasp, throat raw from screaming she didn't remember. He stopped at the foot of the bed, hands loose at his sides. Calm, controlled, somewhere safe. He said, "You've been unconscious for 2 days. The bullet went through clean. No major organs hit. You're lucky, lucky." She almost laughed. "I got shot. You saved my life." His voice was softer now. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." Kira studied him, the expensive room, the way he stood like he owned not just this space but every space. "Who are you?" she whispered. He tilted his head, and for the first time, something like regret flickered across his face. "My name is Luca D'Amato," he said, "and I'm the reason you almost died." The name meant nothing to her, but the way he said it, heavy, like a confession, made her blood run cold. She was about to ask another question when she noticed it. The door behind him closed, no handle on the inside, and the window, beautiful floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking manicured gardens, sealed shut. Her pulse began to race. "When can I leave?" she asked. Luca's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted, something dark and immovable. "When it's safe," he said quietly. It wasn't an answer. It was a sentence. And Kira realized with a sinking, suffocating certainty that she wasn't a guest in this beautiful prison. She was a captive. The days blurred together like watercolors left in the rain. Morning light filtered through curtains that never fully opened. A nurse came and went, middle-aged, efficient, kind in the way paid professionals were kind. She changed bandages, checked vitals, spoke in soft tones that revealed nothing. Her name was Marie, and she answered Kira's questions with the precision of someone who'd been told exactly what to say. "Rest. You need rest. Don't strain yourself. The doctor will be here tomorrow." But the doctor never came. Only Marie with her gentle hands and empty eyes. Luca visited twice a day, morning and evening, like clockwork. He brought books, Toni Morrison, Octavia Butler, Maya Angelou. How did he know? And tea that tasted like jasmine and honey. He never stayed long, just long enough to watch her drink, to ask if she needed anything, to fill the room with that terrible suffocating control. He never touched her, never sat too close. But Kira felt him everywhere. In the clothes that appeared in the closet, her exact size, styles she'd never afford but secretly loved. In the meals that arrived on silver trays, dishes she'd mentioned loving once years ago to friends she barely remembered. Someone had been watching. Someone had been listening. The thought made her skin crawl. By the 4th day, she was strong enough to walk. The pain in her side had dulled to a persistent ache, manageable if she moved carefully. She tested the door when Marie left. Locked. She tried the windows. Sealed. Beautiful prison, indeed. The hallways were marble and silence. Guards in dark suits stood at intervals, polite and immovable. They nodded when she passed, but their eyes tracked her like surveillance cameras. She counted 6 on the 2nd floor alone. The mansion felt endless. High ceilings, oil paintings of men with stern faces and knowing eyes, furniture that looked antique and untouched, everything perfect, everything cold. She found him in the library on the 5th evening. The room was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with volumes that looked older than the country itself. A fire crackled in the hearth, even though October in New Orleans didn't call for it. Luca sat in a wingback chair, a glass of amber liquid in one hand, a file folder in the other. He looked up when she entered, didn't seem surprised. "You should be resting," he said. "I've been resting for 5 days." Kira stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "I want to go home." "You will when it's safe." "You keep saying that." Her voice rose despite herself. Safe from what? Who were those men? Why did they want to kill you? Luca set down his glass with deliberate care. Business rivals. I've made enemies in my line of work. What line of work? Import, export, shipping, investments. The lie rolled off his tongue, smooth as silk. I've been careless. It won't happen again. Careless. She laughed, bitter and sharp. I got shot being your shield. And you call it careless? Something flickered behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or anger. With Luca, it was impossible to tell. He strode across the room toward her in 3 long strides. Kira's breath caught. He stopped just close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. You weren't supposed to be there, he said quietly. You weren't supposed to see any of it. But I was, and I did. Her heart hammered against her ribs. So what happens now? You keep me locked up forever? I keep you alive. His voice dropped, rough with something she couldn't name. They saw your face, Kira. They know you helped me. If I let you go, they'll find you. They'll hurt you to get to me. Then call the police. The police can't help you. Why not? He didn't answer, just stared at her with those dark, fathomless eyes that seemed to see straight through her skull into the messy, frightened parts she tried to hide. You're lying to me, she whispered. Yes. The admission hit her like a slap. At least he was honest about his dishonesty. I want to leave, she said again. I know. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. His fingers brushed her jaw, tilting her face toward the firelight. The touch was feather-soft, reverent almost, but it made her pulse spike like she'd touched a live wire. But I can't let you. Not yet. You don't own me. No. His thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. But I owe you, and I pay my debts. Before she could respond, he stepped back, breaking the spell. The absence of his touch felt like cold water. Dinner is at 8, he said, his voice once again smooth and controlled. Join me. It wasn't a question. The dining room was ridiculous. A table long enough to seat 20 set for 2. Crystal glasses catching candlelight. Silverware that probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Kira sat at one end, Luca at the other, an ocean of polished wood between them. The food was perfect. Black and red fish, dirty rice, collard greens cooked low, and slow the way her grandmother used to make them. Tasted like home. She hated that she loved it. They ate in silence for a while. The only sound, the soft clink of silverware against porcelain. Why books? She asked finally. Luca looked up. Excuse me? The books you brought me. Morrison, Butler, Angelou. How did you know? A pause. Then, you had a copy of Beloved on your nightstand. I saw it in the... He stopped himself. In the what? His jaw tightened. When I carried you out of the restaurant, your bag fell open. Liar. But she didn't call him on it. Not yet. You read? She asked instead. When I have time, which is never, it seems. A ghost of a smile. You'd be surprised. I doubt that. He set down his fork, leaning back in his chair. The firelight painted shadows across his face, softening the hard lines, making him look almost human. You're angry, he said. I'm furious. Good. That surprised her. Good. Anger is honest. I can work with anger. He picked up his wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid. This gratitude I can't stand. People who owe me tend to lie about what they really want. And what do you think I want? Freedom. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You want to walk out that door and never look back. Forget this ever happened. Go back to your tiny apartment and your double shifts in your quiet, invisible life. The accuracy stung. What's wrong with invisible? She asked. Nothing. He stood, rounding the table with his wine glass in hand. But you stopped being invisible the second you stepped between me and that bullet. He was close now. Too close. Close enough that she could smell the wine on his breath, the sandalwood cologne that clung to his skin. You didn't just save my life, he murmured. You changed it. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. I know. His free hand came up, fingers hovering near her face, but not quite touching. That's what makes it worse. Kira's breath hitched. The space between them felt electric, dangerous, like standing too close to the edge of something she couldn't see the bottom of. She pulled back, put distance between them. "I need to check my bandage," she lied. Luca didn't move, just watched her retreat with those unreadable eyes. "Of course," he said softly. "Marie is in the East Wing if you need her." Kira fled. She couldn't sleep. The bed was too soft, the room too quiet, her thoughts too loud. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the gunman's face, felt the bullet tear through her, heard Luca's voice, raw and breaking. "Stay with me." She threw off the covers and padded across the room. The door was locked as always, but there was a balcony she hadn't tried yet. She tested the French doors. They opened. Cool October air rushed in, carrying the scent of magnolia and night-blooming jasmine. The grounds below were lit by soft pathway lights, gardens manicured to within an inch of their lives. In the distance, she could see the dark shimmer of the river. She stepped outside, wrapped her arms around herself against the chill. "You'll catch cold." She spun. Luca stood in the doorway of the adjoining balcony, separated from hers by an ornate iron railing. He wore only sleep pants, his chest bare, tattoos she hadn't known about snaking across his ribs and shoulder. In the moonlight, he looked less like a businessman and more like what she suspected he really was. Dangerous, beautiful, wrong. "I couldn't sleep," she said. "Neither could I." They stood there in silence, breathing the same night air, close but impossibly far. "Why me?" Kira asked finally. "Out of everyone in that restaurant, why did you look at me?" Luca's expression shifted. Something raw and almost vulnerable crossed his face before he locked it down. "Because you looked back," he said quietly. It wasn't an answer, but somehow it was enough. She found the office on day 7. It was an accident. She'd been exploring the 3rd floor, testing doors, looking for something. She didn't know what. Most were locked, but one at the end of a dim hallway opened with a soft click. The room inside was all business. Desk, filing cabinets, computer equipment that looked military-grade, and on the wall a bank of security monitors. Kira's blood turned to ice. There were 12 screens, 12 different angles of the mansion. Front gate, main hall, kitchen, library, her bedroom. She stared at the feed showing her bed, her balcony. Her private space laid bare for whoever sat in this chair to watch. Nausea rolled through her. She was reaching for the door when she noticed the filing cabinet. Unlocked, open, like someone had been interrupted mid-task. Her hands moved before her brain could stop them. She rifled through the files. Shipping manifests, financial reports, legal documents in languages she didn't recognize. Then, near the back, a folder with a name that made her heart stop. Dalton Kira. Inside, photographs. Dozens of them. Kira leaving the Mariner's dock. Kira at the grocery store. Kira in her apartment through her window, brushing her teeth, making coffee, living her life completely unaware she was being watched. The dates went back 3 weeks. 3 weeks before the shooting. She wasn't random. She wasn't a bystander. She was the plan. The realization crushed the air from her lungs. She gripped the edge of the desk, trying to breathe, trying to think past the roaring in her ears. All of it. His gratitude, his guilt, his protective control. All of it was a lie. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Kira shoved the file back, slammed the cabinet shut, and ducked behind the desk just as the door opened. "Telling you it's contained." Luca's voice, sharp with frustration. "She doesn't suspect anything. She's not an idiot, Luca." A woman's voice, smooth and cold. "How long do you think you can keep her here before she figures it out?" "As long as it takes. And when she learns the truth, when she realizes you used her." Silence, heavy and damning. "She won't. You're playing a dangerous game. It's the only game I know." The footsteps retreated. The door closed. Kira stayed frozen behind the desk, her whole body shaking. Used her. The words echoed in her skull like a death knell. She waited until the hallway was silent. Then she ran. She found him in the library again. Because of course she did. Where else would a man like Luca D'Amato wait for his lies to unravel? He looked up when she burst through the door. No surprise in his eyes, just resignation. "You knew I'd find it," Kira said, her voice shaking with fury. "Yes, the photos, the surveillance. You've been watching me for weeks." "Yes. I wasn't random. I wasn't just some good Samaritan in the wrong place." She laughed, bitter and broken. "I was." Luca rose to his feet, his movements slow and deliberate. "That's not how it was supposed to go down. What was supposed to happen then?" She advanced on him, her fear completely consumed by a white-hot rage. "Tell me," she demanded. "Explain to me how you were planning to use me." It was a controlled ambush. His voice was even devoid of any inflection. "I knew they were coming. I had to draw them out. So, I chose a public place somewhere they wouldn't anticipate." "The restaurant?" "Yes." "And me?" "You were." He paused, then continued. "You were meant to be nearby, close enough to be a witness if something went sideways. Insurance, so they couldn't just make me disappear without facing any consequences. I was supposed to watch you die. You weren't supposed to move." For the first time, his carefully constructed facade crumbled, and raw emotion seeped through. "You were supposed to stay behind the counter where it was safe. You weren't supposed to save me." She spat on the floor, her voice laced with venom. "Or get hurt." "But I did." Her voice rose to a shout, tears streaming down her face. "I got shot because you put me there. You watched me for weeks, memorized my schedule, made sure I'd be working that night. It was supposed to be a controlled trap," he repeated, his voice like a broken record. "You weren't meant to get hurt. Does it look like I wasn't hurt to you?" Luca recoiled, as if her words were physical blows, finally striking a vulnerable spot. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "Sorry?" Kira's laugh was manic, fractured. "You're sorry? You wrecked my life, turned me into bait, and now you're holding me prisoner in your guilt-ridden mansion. And you think sorry makes up for that?" "No." He moved toward her. She retreated, but he continued his slow, deliberate advance until she was pinned against the bookshelf, with nowhere left to run. "Sorry doesn't cover it. Nothing can. But I'm saying it anyway because it's the only honest thing I have left." They were now mere inches apart. She could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, the tautness of his jaw. She noticed how his hands were clenching and unclenching, as if he were fighting a powerful urge to reach out to her. "You think this was my plan?" he growled, his voice rough with emotion. "You think I wanted this?" "I don't know what you want," she yelled. "You." The word exploded from him like a confession torn from his very core. "I want you safe. I want you whole. I want you to look at me without that fear in your eyes. I want." He stopped abruptly, shaking his head. "It doesn't matter. You'll never forgive me. I know that. You're right." Her voice was calm now, devoid of warmth. "I won't. I know." "Then let me go." "I can't." "Why not?" "Because they'll kill you." He leaned in, his breath grazing her lips. "Because watching you bleed once nearly destroyed me, and I won't survive watching it happen again. Because I—" He cut himself off, stepping back as if she had burned him. "Because you what?" Kira demanded. But he remained silent, turning and walking away, leaving her alone in the library with her shattered illusions and the agonizing realization that somewhere amidst the lies, the surveillance, and the gilded cage, something had irrevocably changed. She hated him, but God help her, she didn't want him to leave. 2 days passed. Luca didn't come to her room. He didn't bring her tea, or books, or any of the small comforts she had come to expect. Despite herself, the mansion felt colder without his presence, as if winter had seeped into the very walls. Kira spent her time thinking and planning. The door to her room remained locked, but she'd found a hairpin in the bathroom, and her years of poverty had taught her how to manipulate a simple lock. She would leave tonight. She'd been observing the guards and their routines, timing their movements. She had found a window, small but big enough for her to squeeze through. She was testing the hairpin in the lock when she overheard voices in the hallway, low and urgent. A woman's voice, one she recognized from before, the one who had been arguing with Luca. Kira pressed her ear against the door. "You can't keep her here forever," the woman said. "She knows too much." "Then what do you suggest?" Luca's voice was cold as winter steel. "Let me handle it. Clean. Quiet. She disappears and the problem goes with her." Silence followed, heavy and foreboding. "No," Luca said finally. "She's a liability. She's off limits. I won't tell you again." "Serena. So that was her name." "You're soft," Serena hissed. "That's why your father never trusted you to run the family. You care too much." "My father is dead because he cared too much, too." The sound of a slap echoed through the door, followed by Serena's cold laugh. "There he is," she said softly. "There's the D'Amato I remember." Footsteps receded. Kira backed away from the door, her heart pounding. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Luca stood in the doorway, his face a mask of barely contained fury. A red mark was blossoming across his jaw where Serena had struck him. "Pack your things," he said quietly. "What?" "You were right. You can't stay here." He stepped inside and began pulling clothes from the closet. "I have a place in the city secure. You'll go there tonight." "Why?" He stopped, turning to face her. For the first time since she'd met him, Kira saw genuine fear in his eyes. "Because Serena was right about one thing," he said. "You know too much, and there are people in my organization who will kill you for it." "Then why not just let me go?" "Because I made you a promise." He crossed the room and cupped her face in his hands. His touch was desperate, trembling. "I promised I'd keep you safe, and I keep my promises, even if I hate myself for it." Their faces were inches apart. His thumb traced her bottom lip, and she felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. "I'd bleed for you now," he whispered. Kira's breath caught in her throat. For one impossible moment, she wanted to close the distance, to taste the lies on his lips and pretend they were truth. Instead, she stepped back, putting the length of the room between them. "I need to check my bandage," she said, her voice trembling. Luca's hand fell to his side. Something akin to pain flashed across his face. "Of course," he said softly. "Marie is in the East Wing if you need her." Kira fled before she could change her mind. Midnight. The mansion was silent. Luca led her through corridors she had never seen, past guards who nodded and averted their gaze. They reached a garage filled with cars that cost more than houses. He opened the door of a black sedan. "There's a driver. He'll take you to the safe house. Don't open the door for anyone but me." "How long?" "A week, maybe 2. I need to handle Serena and the others. Once it's safe, I'll come for you." Kira climbed into the car. Luca leaned down, resting his hand on the door frame. "Kira." His voice was soft, broken. "I'm sorry for all of it." She should tell him that she hated him. She should spit in his face and tell him to rot. Instead, she reached up and touched his cheek. Just once. "I know," she said. The door closed. The car pulled away. Kira watched through the rear window as Lucas stood in the driveway, growing smaller and smaller until he vanished into the darkness. She thought she was free. She was wrong. The driver didn't take her to a safe house. He took her to the warehouse district by the river, to an abandoned building that reeked of rust and death. And when the door opened, it wasn't Luca who emerged from the shadows. It was Serena. "Hello, Kira," she said, her smile sharp as a blade. "We need to talk about the man you saved." The warehouse was frigid. Not the comfortable chill of air conditioning, but the deep, bone-chilling cold of a place abandoned for so long that it had forgotten what warmth felt like. Metal beams stretched overhead like the ribs of some enormous, deceased creature. Broken windows allowed slivers of streetlight to penetrate, but did little to dispel the gloom. Kira's hands were secured behind her back with zip ties. They had hauled her from the car, efficiently and silently, and placed her on a folding chair in the center of the desolate space. Her side throbbed where the stitches pulled. She could feel blood seeping through the bandage. Serena circled her slowly, her heels clicking against the concrete floor. She possessed a razor-edged beauty, the kind that came with wealth. All clean lines and cold symmetry. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, her suit was tailored to perfection, and her lips were painted the color of dried blood. "Do you know what you cost me?" Serena asked casually. "When you threw yourself in front of that bullet." Kira remained silent, her mind racing, assessing distances, exits, chances. None of them were promising. 3 years of planning, Serena continued. 3 years of carefully positioning pieces, cultivating allies, calling in debts. And then you. She stopped in front of Kira, tilting her head like a predator sizing up its prey. You, with your bleeding heart and your stupid heroics, ruined everything. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. Serena's laugh was cold and piercing. That's what made you perfect. Luca's little bait, completely oblivious to the fact that she was being used. Except you weren't supposed to move. You were supposed to stay behind that counter and watch him die. Her words struck Kira like physical blows. You were there. I fired the shot that went through your side. Serena crouched down, meeting Kira's gaze. The bullet was meant for his head, but you dove. And instead of a dead boss, I got a mess I've been cleaning up for 2 weeks. Kira's blood turned to ice. All this time, she had assumed the attack came from outside enemies, rival families, business disputes. It had never occurred to her that the rot was internal. Why? The word came out hoarse. Why? Serena stood, resuming her circling. Because Luca D'Amato is weak. Because his father built an empire on blood and fear, and his son wants to run it on sentiment and mercy. Because the family needs a leader who understands that power requires sacrifice. So, you tried to kill him. I tried to save us. Serena's voice hardened. The D'Amato family is losing ground. Our allies are questioning our strength. And Luca wastes his time on charity projects and legitimate businesses while our enemies sharpen their knives. Someone had to act. By murdering him, by removing an obstacle. Serena stopped and pulled a phone from her pocket. Which brings us to you. See, Luca made a mistake. He let himself care. And people who care are easily controlled. She held up the phone. A video was playing on the screen. Luca in the library, his head in his hands, the image of a man collapsing under the weight of his own guilt. He blames himself for what happened to you, Serena said softly. It eats him alive every time he looks at you. That guilt. That's a leash and I'm going to use it to bring him to heel. Kira's throat tightened. He won't come for me. He'll know it's a trap. Oh, he knows. Serena smiled. But he'll come anyway because that's what weak men do. They throw themselves on swords for people who aren't worth saving. The words stung more than they should have. Kira thought of Luca's face, inches from hers, the tremor in his hands when he touched her. The way he looked at her as if she were something precious and terrifying all at once. You're wrong about him, Kira said quietly. Am I? Serena tucked the phone away. Then why did he use you as bait? Why did he watch you for weeks, learn your patterns, make sure you'd be in that restaurant when hell came calling? He said it was supposed to be controlled. And you believed him? Serena laughed. God, you really are naive. There's no such thing as controlled chaos, Kira. He put you in the line of fire and told himself it was for the greater good. Just like his father did to 100 other people who got in the way. The mention of Luca's father sent a shiver down Kira's spine. She had seen the photograph in the library. The stern-faced man with eyes like winter. The caption had read, Angelo D'Amato, 1952 to 2023. His father was a monster, Serena said, reading Kira's expression. He built his empire on the backs of people who couldn't fight back. Luca likes to pretend he's different, but blood doesn't lie. The D'Amato family takes what it wants and destroys what's in the way. You're just the latest casualty. If I'm a casualty, why not just kill me? Serena's smile widened. Because you're more useful alive. For now. Footsteps echoed from the shadows. 2 men emerged, both armed, both moving with the casual confidence of those who knew how to inflict pain. Kira recognized one of them from Luca's estate, a guard she had seen in the hallways. How long until he gets here? Serena asked. 20 minutes, the guard replied. GPS tracker in the girl's clothes. He's coming fast. Good. Serena pulled a gun from her jacket and checked the magazine with practiced efficiency. Remember, wound him. Don't kill him. I want him conscious for what comes next. The guard nodded and disappeared back into the darkness. Serena turned back to Kira, the gun held loosely in her hand. Here's what's going to happen, she said. Luca is going to walk through that door trying to be a hero. We're going to shoot him just enough to make him helpless. And then I'm going to make him watch while I put a bullet in your head. After that, he'll sign over control of the family, or I'll start killing everyone he's ever cared about. Either way, I win. Kira's heart pounded against her ribs. She tested the zip ties. They were tight but made of cheap plastic. If she could find something sharp, maybe. Don't bother, Serena said, noticing the movement. You're not getting out of those. And even if you did, there are 6 armed men in this warehouse. You'd be dead before you reached the door. Then why tell me the plan? Serena crouched down again, close enough that Kira could smell her perfume. Something expensive and floral that reminded her of funerals. Because I want you to understand something, Serena whispered. Luca doesn't love you. He loves the idea of you, the innocent girl who saved him without knowing what he was. The fantasy of redemption. But love, real love. She shook her head. Men like him don't know how to love. They only know how to possess. Before Kira could respond, the screech of tires shattered the silence. Serena stood, raising her gun and nodding to the shadows. Figures materialized around the warehouse, men with weapons, moving into position. The main door burst inward. Luca stormed in like a force of nature, gun in hand, his face a mask of cold fury. He was alone, no backup, no plan, just raw, desperate violence. He made it 3 steps before the first shot hit him in the shoulder. Luca spun, dropping to one knee, but didn't fall. He fired back, 2 shots, precise and lethal. A body dropped from the rafters, another from behind a pillar. Luca, stop! Serena's voice rang out. Or I'll put the next bullet in her brain. He froze. Blood was spreading across his shirt, dark and wet. His eyes found Kira across the warehouse, and something in his expression shattered. Let her go, he said, his voice hoarse. This is between us. You made it about her the second you used her as bait. Serena pressed the gun against Kira's temple. The metal was ice cold. Drop your weapon. Luca hesitated. Every muscle in his body screamed for violence, but his hand opened. The gun clattered to the concrete floor. Good, Serena smiled. Now kick it away. He did as he was told. The weapon skittered into the darkness. Serena circled around Kira's chair, using her as a shield. You know what's funny? She doesn't even know the full story about why you picked her specifically. About the Dalton file. Kira's blood ran cold. What? Dalton file? Oh, you haven't told her? Serena's laugh was cruel. How delightfully cowardly of you, Luca. Shall I do the honors? Serena. His voice was a warning, raw and desperate. 6 years ago, your brother died in gang crossfire, Serena said, her words clinical. Malik Dalton, 17 years old, shot on the corner of Rampart and Pine Street. Do you remember that day, Kira? Tears stung Kira's eyes. Of course, she remembered. It was etched into her bones. What you don't know, Serena continued, is that the hit was ordered by Angelo D'Amato. Your brother was in the wrong place at the wrong time, collateral damage in a territorial dispute. The D'Amato family killed him, and Luca knew. The warehouse tilted. Kira's vision blurred. She looked at Luca, searching for denial, for anything that would refute Serena's words. His face revealed everything. No, Kira whispered. I didn't know until after, Luca said, his voice breaking. I swear to God, I didn't know until... Until when? Kira's voice cracked. Until after you decided to use me? Until after you put me in that restaurant? I never meant. You knew. The scream ripped from her throat. You knew your family killed Malik and you used me anyway. It wasn't like that. A gunshot exploded in the warehouse. Luca jerked, clutching his side. Another shot rang out, this one hitting him in the leg. He went down hard, blood pooling beneath him. Enough talking, Serena said calmly. She aimed the gun at Luca's head. Time to end this. Kira reacted instinctively. She threw herself sideways, chair and all, slamming into Serena's legs. They fell in a tangle of limbs and metal. The gun discharged wildly, the bullet ricocheting off the concrete floor. Kira's shoulder hit the ground hard, sending white-hot pain through her injured side. But the zip ties had snagged on something. A jagged piece of metal from the chair's broken leg. She tugged, felt the plastic give, then snap. Her hands were free. Serena recovered quickly, swinging the gun towards Kira. But Luca was already moving, throwing himself across the space between them despite his injuries. He collided with Serena, and they rolled, grappling for the weapon. Around them, the warehouse erupted in chaos. Luca's men, hidden and waiting, opened fire. Serena's people scattered, returning fire. The night transformed into a storm of chaos and muzzle flashes. Kira scrambled for cover behind an overturned crate. Her hands found something cold and heavy, one of the fallen guns. She had never fired a weapon in her life, but her fingers wrapped around the grip as if they had been waiting for this moment. Through the chaos, she saw them, Luca and Serena, still fighting for control of the gun. Blood smeared their hands. Their faces were inches apart. Fury and betrayal made physical. "Every woman who touches you bleeds," Serena hissed, her voice cutting through the gunfire. "She just got there first. But they all die eventually. Your mother, your sister, her." She gestured towards Kira with her chin. "Everyone you love turns to ash." Luca's face went blank, cold. The man who had held Kira with trembling hands vanished, replaced by something older and darker. His hand closed over Serena's on the gun. He forced it up, pressing the barrel under her chin. "Not this time," he said softly. The gunshot was muffled by flesh and bone. Serena's body went limp. Luca held her for a moment, his face expressionless, and then let her fall. Silence descended like a physical weight. The remaining gunmen had either fled or fallen. Only the dead and dying remained. Luca rose slowly, swaying. Blood dripped from his wounds, leaving dark trails on the concrete. He turned towards Kira, and she saw the moment he registered what had just happened, what she had witnessed. He had killed Serena in cold blood. "Kira," he said, his voice hollow. Serena's body twitched. Not dead yet. Her lips moved, blood bubbling between them. Luca dropped to his knees beside her. Kira approached slowly, the gun still clutched in her hand, though she had no memory of picking it up. Serena's eyes found hers. Despite the blood, despite the hole in her throat, she smiled. "Ask him," she whispered, each word wet and labored. "Ask him about the Dalton file, about why he really picked you." "I already told her," Luca said. "Not all of it." Serena coughed, spraying blood across her lips. "Tell her about the orders. Tell her whose finger pulled the trigger." Luca's face turned ashen. Kira's hands began to tremble. "What is she talking about?" "Here's how to rewrite that crucial scene with the father as the killer instead." "The man who shot your brother," Serena rasped. "Angelo D'Amato, the great patriarch himself." Her eyes locked onto Luca. "But tell her where you were that day. Tell her what you knew." "Serena, please. Tell her you were there." Serena's voice cracked. Blood gurgled from her mouth. "Tell her you watched your father gun down Malik Dalton and did nothing." The warehouse vanished. The world vanished. There was only Serena's dying smile and Luca's stricken face, and the terrible truth hanging between them like a noose. "No," Kira breathed. "I was 19, Luca said, his voice barely audible. "I was in the car. My father told me to watch. Said I needed to learn how the family handled business. I didn't know there was a kid there. I didn't know." His voice broke. "I saw him go down. Saw your brother fall. And I just sat there, frozen. Too afraid to stop it. Too weak to do anything but watch. You watched him die." The words came out flat, lifeless. "You watched Malik die and did nothing. I wanted to, God. I wanted to get out, to help, to call someone. But my father grabbed me. Said if I moved, I'd be next. Said that's what happens to people who show weakness." He was shaking now, the confession tearing from him. "By the time I broke free and ran to him, he was already gone. I held him, this kid I didn't know, and I felt his last breath." Tears streamed down his face. I've seen his face every night since. Your eyes, he had your eyes, Kira. Stop, she whispered. When I found your file years later, when I recognized the name Dalton, when I realized that you were his sister. His voice broke completely. I should have stayed away. I should have disappeared from your life. But I thought if I could protect you, if I could keep you safe from the same violence that killed him, maybe I could make it right. Kira laughed. A wild, broken sound. By using me? By putting me in danger? That's how you atone for letting my brother die. I never wanted you to get hurt. I swear. Your swearing doesn't mean anything. She was screaming now, all control shattered. You watched my brother get murdered. Your father pulled the trigger, and you sat there like a coward. And then you used me, like I was. She couldn't finish, couldn't breathe. The gun in her hand felt impossibly heavy. Serena's body had gone still, dead now, truly dead. Her final gift was, the truth was a weapon that would obliterate them both. Luca slowly rose, his hands held up as if Kira were the one pointing a gun at him. Blood saturated his clothing. He swayed, barely clinging to consciousness, but his gaze remained locked on hers. I was a coward, he confessed softly. I was 19 and paralyzed with fear, and I let my father's monster turn me into one too. I've spent every single day since then trying to gather the courage to atone for that moment. But I know, his voice cracked with emotion, I know there's nothing I can ever do to undo my cowardice. Nothing that will bring him back. But please, Kira, please believe me when I tell you I would go back in time. I would gladly take the bullet that was meant for him. I would stand up to my father even if it meant my own death. I would trade places with Malik in a heartbeat. But you can't. Kira's voice was devoid of feeling, cold and empty. And nothing you ever do will ever change that. I know. She raised the gun, aiming it at his chest. Her finger lingered on the trigger for what felt like an eternity. Neither of them made a move. The warehouse held its breath. Then Kira slowly lowered the weapon. It wasn't because she forgave him, nor because her rage had subsided, but because she suddenly understood with brutal clarity that killing him would transform her into the very thing she despised. Someone who resorted to violence when there was still another choice to be made. Get out, she ordered. Kira, just get out. The scream reverberated through the empty space. Get out before I change my mind. Luca retreated toward the door, moving like a man caught in a nightmare. At the threshold, he paused. I'm sorry, he uttered one last time. Then he vanished, swallowed by the darkness of the night. Kira remained alone in the warehouse, surrounded by bodies, blood, and the wreckage of everything she thought she knew. The gun slipped from her grasp, clattering loudly against the concrete floor. She sank to her knees and finally allowed the tears to flow. 3 days dissolved into a hazy blur of police inquiries and hospital visits. The official explanation was simple. A turf war between rival gangs. Wrong place, wrong time. A tragedy that occurred far too frequently in this city. The police didn't delve too deep. They never did when D'Amato money greased the wheels. Kira returned to her apartment to discover it had been meticulously cleaned. All traces of surveillance had been removed. Her rent had been paid for the entire year. An envelope lay on the kitchen counter, containing $50,000 in cash and a note, written in unfamiliar handwriting. For your brother's memorial, L. She incinerated the note, kept the money, and used half of it to finally purchase the gravestone Malik deserved. The remaining half she donated to the youth center where he had volunteered. The center that taught kids there were alternatives to street corners and gang colors. She didn't include her name, simply wrote in memory of Malik Dalton on the check and dropped it in the mail. She believed that would be the end of it, that Luca would recede back into his empire of blood and silence, and she could return to her insignificant, unnoticed life. She was wrong. He appeared on a Tuesday. Of course, it was a Tuesday. Perhaps that was his pattern. Violence and devastation wrapped in the middle of the week. Kira was closing up at the marina's dock when she sensed his presence behind her. She didn't turn around. She didn't need to. She would recognize the weight of his silence anywhere. The restaurant rehired you, he said. Jerome owed me. She locked the cash register, keeping her hands occupied to prevent them from trembling. And I need the money. You don't. I made sure. I don't want your money. She finally turned to face him. He looked awful. He'd lost weight. There were dark circles under his eyes, and he moved as if each step caused him physical pain. Good. What do you want, Luca? To talk. We have nothing to talk about, please. 5 minutes, then I'll leave, and you'll never see me again. The word please sounded foreign coming from his mouth. Against her better judgment, she nodded toward a booth. They sat across from each other like strangers in a confessional. Serena wasn't working alone, Luca began without preamble. She had allies within the family, people who agreed I was too weak to lead. I've spent the last 3 days rooting them out. I don't care about your gang war. You should, because some of them know about you. They know you were at the warehouse. They know you witnessed what happened to Serena. Kira's blood turned to ice. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. He leaned forward, desperation cracking through his controlled facade. There are people who want to hurt me by hurting you. I've increased security at your building. There are men watching. Stop. She raised a hand. Stop watching me. Stop protecting me. Stop pretending you care. I do care. You care about your guilt. The words burst out of her. You care about making yourself feel better for murdering my brother. But you don't care about me. You don't even know me. I know you take care of Mrs. Washington's dog when she's having bad days. I know you donate half your tips to the food bank. I know you haven't been able to sleep through the night since Malik died. I know. His voice broke. I know you deserve better than any of this. Then let me go. I can't. His hands clenched on the table. Not while you're in danger. I'm in danger because of you. Because you dragged me into your world. And now I can't get out. She stood up. Done with this conversation. Done with him. You want to help me? Disappear. Take your guilt, your blood money, and your protection and leave me alone. She started walking toward the door. His voice stopped her. There's an attack coming. Kira froze. I've picked up chatter, Luca continued. Someone's planning something big. A move against me. They're going to hit soft targets. Places I've been. People who matter. And you think I'm a target. I know you are. She turned slowly. So what? You want to lock me up in your mansion again? Keep me in your gilded cage until your war is over? I want you safe. What you want doesn't matter anymore. She opened the door, letting in the humid night air, the sound of traffic, and the promise of normalcy. Find someone else to save, Luca. I'm done being your redemption project. She walked out into the night. Behind her, she heard his voice, soft and broken. I'm sorry I can't be. The FBI arrived the next morning. Kira was opening the bookstore when the woman in the gray suit appeared beside the poetry section. Federal badge, sharp eyes. The kind of authority that didn't ask. It informed. Miss Dalton, I'm Special Agent Collins. We need to talk about Luca D'Amato. Kira's hands stilled on the cash register. I don't know anything. You know enough. Agent Collins pulled a folder from her briefcase and placed it on the counter. You witnessed the warehouse shooting. Serena Vitali's death. You can place Luca D'Amato at multiple crime scenes. I'm not testifying against anyone. We're not asking you to testify. Collins opened the folder. Inside were photographs of bodies, surveillance images, financial records. We're offering you a way out. Witness protection. New identity. New city. Full support. You disappear. And the D'Amato family never finds you. Kira stared at the photos. All those bodies, all that blood. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Luca trying to be better than his bloodline. What happens to him? She asked quietly. We build our case without you. Takes longer, but we get there eventually. The D'Amato empire falls. He goes to prison or worse. And you're safe. Somewhere far away, living the life you should have had before he dragged you into his war. It was everything she had wanted a month ago. Freedom, safety. A chance to start over without the weight of Malik's ghost and Luca's guilt crushing her chest. How long do I have to decide? 72 hours. Collins slid a card across the counter. After that, the offer expires. And Miss Dalton? Her voice softened. I've seen this story before. Woman gets pulled into a dangerous man's world, thinks she can save him, ends up dead. Don't be another statistic. Collins left. The card lay on the counter like an accusation. Kira picked it up, turned it over in her hands, and thought about Malik, who had always told her she was the brave one. She thought about running again, about letting violence win again. She thought about Luca's face when he'd confessed about the surveillance, about his voice breaking when he said, I would take the bullet meant for him, about the choice between safety and truth, between running and standing still. She looked at the card one more time. Then she tore it in half and dropped it in the trash. Not because she forgave him, not because she trusted him, but because she was choosing herself and the version of herself who didn't run when things got hard. She'd made her decision. Now she'd live with it or die with it. Either way, it was hers. The attack came 2 days later. Kira was walking home from the grocery store, bags in hand, thinking about nothing more significant than whether she had enough eggs for breakfast. The black van materialized out of nowhere, screeching around the corner. The side door already open. Hands grabbed her, pulling her inside. The bags fell, eggs breaking on the pavement like tiny explosions. She fought, screamed, landed a solid elbow that made someone grunt in pain, but there were too many of them and they were too strong. Within seconds, her hands were bound, and a hood was pulled over her head. The van sped off. She tried to keep track of the turns, count the seconds, anything that might help her figure out where they were taking her. But panic narrowed her world to her breath, her heartbeat, and the chilling certainty that this was how she would die. When they finally stopped, rough hands dragged her out. She heard water, waves against a dock, smelled salt, rust, and old wood. The hood was ripped off. She was standing at the end of a pier in an industrial district, abandoned warehouses looming behind her. The river stretched, black and infinite, beneath her feet. 3 men surrounded her, all armed. The one in front smiled. He was older, with silver in his hair, wearing an expensive suit that seemed out of place against the backdrop of urban decay. Kira Dalton, he said, his voice smooth as poison. Thank you for joining us. Who are you? Matteo Russo. I'm what you might call a business associate of your friend, Mr. D'Amato. Or I was, before he decided mercy was more profitable than loyalty. Kira's mind raced. I don't know anything about his business. Of course you don't. Matteo circled her slowly. But you know him, and that's enough. You see, Luca D'Amato has become a problem. He's gone soft. Started refusing contracts, questioning orders, turning down opportunities because they're not ethical. He said the word as if it tasted foul. Men like him get people killed. Then kill him yourself. Oh, we plan to. Matteo stopped in front of her. But first, we need to send a message about the cost of weakness, about what happens to people who matter to men who forget what they are. I don't matter to him. You really believe that? Matteo laughed. He's had 6 men watching you 24/7 since the warehouse. Turned down 3 contracts because they were too close to your neighborhood. Hell, he bought the restaurant you work at just to make sure you'd have a job to come back to. The words hit her like physical blows. You're lying. Am I? Matteo pulled out his phone and showed her a video. Luca, visibly wounded, was leaning across a table toward a group of hard-faced men. The audio was faint but clear. She's off limits. Anyone who touches her answers to me personally. Kira's knees buckled. He's been protecting you, Matteo said softly. Obsessively, desperately. Like you're the only good thing in his entire blood-stained life, which makes you the perfect pressure point. He won't come for me. Not after. She stopped herself. After you learned he killed your brother? Matteo's smile widened. Oh, we know all about that. Tragic, really, but irrelevant. You see, we've already sent him your location. And knowing Luca, he's already on his way, alone, probably thinking he can trade himself for you. This is a trap, obviously. Matteo checked his watch. He should be here in about 10 minutes. Just enough time for you to understand something important. He leaned close, his breath hot against her face. All of this, the attack, your kidnapping, the whole dramatic setup, Luca knew it was coming. We made sure he knew. Gave him just enough intelligence to figure out our plan. And you know what he did? Kira's heart stopped. He let it happen, Matteo whispered. Pulled your security. Made sure you were vulnerable because he needs us to come after you so he can draw us out. You're bait again, Kira. Just like the first time. He's using you to win his war. The peer tilted. Or maybe that was just her world ending again. You're lying, she said. But the words sounded hollow. Am I? Matteo straightened. Ask him yourself. He'll be here soon. And right before I put a bullet in his head, I want you to look him in the eye and ask, did you know? Did you let them take me? And watch him try to lie. Behind them, tires screeched. A black car skidded to a stop at the pier's entrance. The driver's door opened. Luca stepped out, gun in hand, looking like death warmed over. Let her go, Matteo, he called across the distance. This is between us. Matteo pressed a gun to Kira's temple. Come any closer, and I paint the dock with her brains. Luca stopped. 50 feet separated them. But Kira could see his face clearly in the streetlight. The desperation, the guilt, the terrible, damning truth. Did you know? She called out. Did you know they were coming for me? The silence stretched like a wound. Answer her, Matteo said, amused. Did you sacrifice her again? Luca's jaw worked. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Yes. The word shattered something fundamental in Kira's chest. I got intelligence 3 days ago, he continued, each word like pulling teeth. About a planned attack. I knew if I pulled security completely, they'd move fast. Take you as leverage. And he stopped, then started again. I let them because I needed to draw them out. End this. I couldn't protect you forever unless I eliminated the threat. You used me, Kira said numbly. I did what I had to save yourself. To save you. The words exploded out of him. These men, Kira, they don't stop. They don't negotiate. The only way to keep you safe was to make them come into the open where I could. Where you could what? Kill them? Win? It's always about winning with you people. She was shaking now, with rage and betrayal and something deeper. Something that felt like grief for a person who'd never existed. I actually thought maybe you were different. That maybe, despite everything, you actually... She couldn't finish. Couldn't say the word loved, because that would make it real. And she refused to give him that power. I'm sorry, Luca said quietly, for all of it. But I'd do it again. I'd use you 1,000 times if it meant keeping you alive. That's not love, Kira whispered. That's possession. I know. His voice broke. I know the difference now. And I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But please just let me finish this. Let me end them so you can be free. Matteo laughed, the sound echoing across the water. Touching. Really. But we're done with the speeches. He cocked the gun against Kira's head. Drop your weapon, D'Amato. Do it now, or I splatter her memories across this dock. Luca's hand opened. The gun fell. Good. Now kick it into the water. He did. The weapon disappeared into the black current with barely a splash. Matteo nodded to his men. They advanced on Luca, weapons raised. And Kira understood with sudden, crystal clarity that she was about to watch Luca die. That Matteo would execute him in front of her, make her watch, and then probably kill her too because dead witnesses told no tales. She'd spent days hating Luca, hating what he'd done, what he was, the blood on his hands that could never wash clean. But she realized, standing on that dock with a gun to her head, that hate and love weren't opposites. They were neighbors, and somewhere in the space between them, she'd fallen without even knowing it. Wait, she said. Matteo paused. Last words. Kill me. The offer came out steady, clear. Kill me instead. Let him go. Every eye turned to her. Are you insane? Matteo asked, genuinely confused. He's worth more alive, she said quickly, her mind racing. Think about it. You kill him, you fracture the D'Amato family, create a power vacuum, wars, chaos. But if he's alive and broken, if he's seen as weak because you killed someone under his protection, he loses everything anyway. His reputation, his authority. You win without the bloodshed. It was a terrible argument, full of holes, but she was betting on one thing, Matteo's ego. Besides, she added, I'm nobody, just a waitress. You kill me, and Luca spends the rest of his life hunting you. Makes it personal. But let him watch me die. Let him live with that. She forced her voice to stay steady. That's a better revenge. Matteo considered it. Behind him, Luca's face had gone white. Kira, don't, he started. Shut up, she snapped to Matteo. So, what's it going to be? Matteo smiled slowly. You know what? You're right. This is better. He turned the gun from Kira's head and shot Luca. The first bullet caught him in the chest. He went down hard. The second and third followed before he hit the ground. No. The scream ripped out of Kira. She threw herself sideways, breaking Matteo's grip, and ran toward Luca's fallen body. Matteo laughed. See, this is better. Let her hold him while he bleeds out. Poetic. But as Kira dropped to her knees beside Luca, her bound hands scrabbled across the ground. She found what she'd spotted earlier. A broken bottle, the glass sharp as a razor. She sawed at the zip ties. They parted. Her hands were free. Luca's eyes were glazed, blood bubbling from his lips. But he was still breathing, still alive, still reaching for her with trembling fingers. Get out of here, he rasped. Run. Instead, Kira grabbed the gun lying beside him, the one he must have hidden in an ankle holster. Her fingers closed around the grip. She spun, raised it. Matteo was still laughing, the gun loose at his side, confident this wasn't a threat. She proved him wrong. The shot caught Matteo in the shoulder. He stumbled back, shock replacing amusement. Kira fired again. This one went wide, but it sent his men scattering for cover. Get him! Matteo screamed. Gunfire erupted. Kira dove behind a concrete pillar, dragging Luca with her. He was heavy, dead weight, leaving a smear of blood across the dock. His breath came in wet gasps. You're supposed to run, he choked out. Shut up. Her hands pressed against his chest, trying to staunch the bleeding. So much blood. Too much. It soaked through her fingers, warm and slick. Just stay with me. The words echoed back to that first night when he'd held her the same way, when their roles had been reversed, bullets chipping concrete above their heads. Kira risked a glance around the pillar. 3 shooters. Matteo behind cover, clutching his shoulder. They were pinned. Theirs? Luca coughed, blood spraying his lips. There's a boat. North Dock. Keys in the ignition. If you can get to it. We're getting to it, she corrected. Both of us. I'm dying, Kira. You don't get to die. She grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You don't get to use me as bait twice and then die before I can tell you what a bastard you are. You don't get that easy out. Something that might have been a laugh rattled in his chest. Fair. A figure darted toward them. Kira swung the gun up. Fired. The man dropped. She'd never killed anyone before. The thought should have horrified her. Instead, all she felt was cold, crystalline clarity. They needed to move. She hooked her arm under Luca's shoulder. On 3, we run for that boat. I can't. 1. She hauled him up. He gasped in pain. Kira. 2. She scanned the dock. The boat was 40 feet away. 40 feet of open space with nowhere to hide. This is insane, Luca breathed. 3. They ran. Or rather, she ran, half carrying, half dragging him. His feet stumbled beneath him. Blood dripped with every step. Behind them, shouts and gunfire. A bullet whizzed past her ear. 20 feet. 15. Luca's legs gave out. They went down together on the wet boards. Kira's injured side screamed in protest. She ignored it, grabbed him again. Pulled. 10 feet. A shadow fell across them. Matteo, moving despite his wound, gun raised. His face was twisted with rage. "Stupid girl," he snarled. "You think you can save him? You think?" The shot came from behind them. Mateo's head snapped back. He crumpled. Kira spun. At the pier's entrance, a group of men in dark suits emerged from 3 black cars. In front stood a woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair pulled back, carrying herself with the authority of someone used to being obeyed. "Get them on the boat," she ordered. Her voice carried the same accent as Luca's. "The rest of you clean this up." 2 men rushed forward, lifting Luca with practiced efficiency. One guided Kira toward the boat. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Family," the woman said simply. Then to Luca, as they carried him past, "You are so grounded when you recover from this." Despite the blood, the bullets, and the dying, Luca smiled. "Hi, Mom." The boat ride was a blur. Someone pressed gauze to Luca's wounds. Someone else gave Kira a blanket that smelled like diesel and salt. The woman, Luca's mother, apparently, made phone calls in rapid Italian while the city lights streaked by. They didn't go to a hospital. Of course, they didn't. Instead, the boat docked at a private marina where ambulances waited, with paramedics who asked no questions. Luca was unconscious by the time they loaded him in. His hand slipped from Kira's, leaving blood on her palm. She started to climb in after him, but his mother caught her arm. "He'll survive," she said. "The bullets missed everything vital. He's too stubborn to die from something this mundane. I need to. You need medical attention yourself." The woman's gaze dropped to Kira's side, where blood had soaked through her shirt. "And then we need to talk." Kira wanted to argue, but exhaustion hit her like a wave, and the world tilted sideways. Strong hands caught her before she fell. She woke in a hospital room, a real one this time, with beeping monitors and that familiar antiseptic smell. Morning light filtered through the blinds. Her side was freshly bandaged. The pain, weakened by the drugs dripping into her through the floor, Kira became aware of her surroundings. Luca's mom was sitting in a chair by the window, engrossed in a book. Hearing Kira stir, she looked up. "You're awake. Good." She marked her page and set the book aside. "I'm Isabella D'Amato, and before you even ask, yes, I know everything. I know about what my son did, about your brother, about the spectacular mess you two have created." Kira's throat felt like sandpaper. "Is he alive?" Isabella gave a fractional smile. "Awake and raising hell, demanding to see you despite what the doctors ordered." Isabella's face softened just a tad. "He's down the hall in room 347. But first, you and I need to have a little talk." "I don't want to talk." "Too bad." Isabella leaned forward, her eyes intense. "My husband killed your brother. My son was there and watched him die. That's a cold, hard fact. It's something neither of you can ever change. But I need you to understand something about that night." Kira started to protest, but Isabella raised a hand, cutting her off. Luca was only 19, fresh out of the gate in the family business, trying to prove himself worthy of the D'Amato name. His father sent him to that corner, told him to send a message to a rival gang. Luca didn't know there were civilians close by. He had no idea a child was in the crossfire until it was too late. When he came home that night, she paused, a flicker of pain crossing her features. He locked himself in his room for 3 solid days. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't speak to anyone. "I thought I'd lost him, that he was gone." "That doesn't make it okay," Kira said quietly. "No, it absolutely doesn't. But maybe, just maybe, it makes it a little understandable." Isabella stood up and walked over to the window, gazing out. After that night, Luca just wasn't the same. He started questioning orders, pushing for the family to get away from the violence. His father hated it, said he was going soft. But Luca didn't care. He'd seen firsthand what that life cost, and he wanted out. Or at the very least, he wanted to build something different. "Why are you telling me all this?" Isabella turned back to face Kira. "Because you're standing at a crossroads and you have a choice to make. You can walk away from all this. I'll make sure you're protected. I'll set you up somewhere far away from here, with enough money to start over." Luca will never contact you again. You'll be free. Or you can stay. You can choose to see my son for who he really is. Not the monster he once was. Not the saint he'll never be. But the man who's desperately trying to be better than his bloodline. Either way, I'll respect your decision, but I need you to make it knowing everything you're choosing. Kira closed her eyes. The smart choice was so glaringly obvious. Take the money. Run as fast and as far as she could. Never look back. Never think about any of it again. But when she opened her eyes again, all she could see was Luca's face on that dock. Blood bubbling from his lips as he reached for her with trembling fingers. I need to see him, she said. Isabella gave a small, knowing smile. Room 347. Luca was propped up in bed, his chest wrapped in bandages, monitors beeping, tracking his vitals. He looked pale and hollow-eyed, but undeniably alive. When Kira stepped through the door, his entire body seemed to tense. You shouldn't be walking around, he said. Neither should you be conscious. She moved to the chair beside his bed and sank into it. Her legs felt like they were about to give out from under her. Silence hung between them, heavy with everything they hadn't said, with all the things that couldn't be put into words. I'm sorry, Luca said finally, his voice barely a whisper. I know I keep saying it. I know it doesn't change anything, but... Kira raised a hand, cutting him off. Just stop apologizing. I'm tired of apologies. They don't mean anything anymore. He flinched as if she'd slapped him. What I want, she continued, her voice surprisingly steady, is the truth. All of it. No more surveillance. No more using me as bait. No more protection I didn't ask for. I want you to look at me and tell me honestly. What am I to you? Guilt? Redemption? Or something real? Luca's jaw worked as he struggled to find the words. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw and filled with emotion. You're the first person in 10 years who looked at me and didn't see my last name. You saw me, just me. And I... He stopped, took a breath and started again. I fell in love with that version of myself. The man who existed when you looked at me, not the D'Amato heir, not the killer, just Luca. That man doesn't exist, Kira said softly, the words laced with sadness. I know. His hand moved toward hers, then stopped, hesitant and unsure. But I want him to. I want to be someone worthy of the way you looked at me before you knew what I was. You can't undo the past, Luca. No. But I can stop pretending it doesn't matter. His fingers finally closed over hers, his grip gentle but firm. I killed your brother. That's a debt I'll carry for the rest of my life. If you want me to spend the rest of my life making amends, I will. If you want me to disappear so you can heal, I will. Whatever you need, Kira, I'll give it to you. She stared at their joined hands, his scarred and blood-stained, hers still trembling from pulling a trigger. Two broken people who'd destroyed each other in so many ways and somehow ended up here, together. I don't forgive you, she said finally, the words hanging in the air. I know, and I probably never will. I know, Luca said, but I don't want you to disappear. The words surprised her as much as they surprised him. I want to see if we can build something honest out of all these lies. Something that doesn't require me to forget what you did, but doesn't destroy us both either. Luca's breath hitched in his throat. That might be impossible. Probably. She looked up and met his gaze. Her eyes filled with a mixture of pain and determination. But you owe me the attempt. You owe Malik the attempt. And maybe, just maybe, we owe it to ourselves. He lifted her hand and pressed his lips to her knuckles. The gesture was gentle, reverent. Nothing like the desperate, fevered kisses they'd shared before. This was quieter, sadder, infinitely more real. I don't deserve you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. No, you don't. She didn't pull away. But I'm choosing you anyway. Not because you've earned it, but because I'm choosing myself and the version of me that exists when I look at you. She's brave enough to try. They sat in silence as the morning light slowly filled the room. Two survivors of the same tragedy, clinging to each other like anchors in a storm. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't absolution, but it was a beginning. Recovery took weeks. Luca's wounds were healing slower than expected. Infection, complications, the price of getting shot 3 times and refusing to stay in bed. Kira visited him every day, even when he was unconscious. Even when the nurses told her she needed to rest, she'd drag a chair up to his bedside and read to him. Usually Toni Morrison, a writer he'd once seen on her nightstand and knew she loved. Now, she read aloud, her voice filling the sterile room with ghosts and memories and the impossible weight of history. Sometimes he was awake enough to listen to the stories, to follow the narratives. Other times he just watched her, memorizing the way her lips moved around the words, the way her brow furrowed when she was deep in thought. On the 15th day, Isabella came to Kira's room carrying a thick folder. "The Dalton file," she said without preamble, handing it over. "You deserve to see it. All of it." Kira's hands shook as she opened the folder. Inside were copies of police reports from that day 6 years ago, grainy surveillance footage from the corner store, witness statements, and, buried at the very back, orders signed by Angelo D'Amato and executed by his son, Luca. The clinical, emotionless language didn't soften the horror. If anything, it made it infinitely worse. Asterisk target. Rival territory. Acceptable losses. Collateral damage. Operator El Dado. Asterisk her brother reduced to collateral damage. A mere line item in a brutal gang war. There were other documents as well. Financial records showing regular, substantial deposits to a youth center in Malik's name. Scholarship funds for kids from the neighborhood. Anonymous donations that had been going on for years. "Luca's been trying to make amends," Isabella said quietly, breaking the silence. "Not to you, not specifically. He only recently realized who you were. But to Malik's memory, to the neighborhood. It doesn't undo what he did, not by a long shot. But he's been trying." Kira closed the folder, her vision blurring with tears. "Why show me this?" "Because you're considering staying. And if you stay, you need to know what you're staying for. The good and the bad, the guilt and the attempted redemption. All of it." "I can't forgive him for this," Kira whispered, the words choked with pain. "No one's asking you to." Isabella's voice was gentle, filled with a quiet understanding. "But perhaps you can understand him. And perhaps understanding is enough to build on." The confrontation came on a gray October morning, rain tapping softly against the windows. Luca was finally well enough to be discharged. Kira found him in his room dressed in fresh clothes, standing and staring out at the unrelenting storm. "Your mother gave me the file," she said, breaking the silence. He didn't turn. She continued, "All these years, you've been trying to pay back a debt to a dead boy you never even knew." He remained silent. "It's not enough, Luca. It will never be enough." "No," he finally said, his voice low and heavy. She moved to stand beside him, watching the rain streak down the glass. "But it's something. It's more than most people in your position would do. That's a pretty low bar. It's the only bar we have." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen. Don't interrupt. Don't apologize. Just hear me." He nodded slowly. Kira took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "When Malik died, I spent years hating myself, hating that I wasn't there, hating that I survived when he didn't. I built my whole life around that guilt, brick by painstaking brick. I made myself small and invisible because I didn't deserve to take up space in a world he couldn't see. And then you happened, and I saved you. And for one moment, one stupid, reckless moment, I felt like maybe I'd paid back some cosmic debt." Her voice cracked with emotion. Luca's hand moved toward hers, then stopped, hovering in the air, unsure. "But then," she continued, her voice rising in pitch, "I found out you killed him, and that moment shattered into a million pieces because the universe wasn't balancing scales. It was laughing at me, making me save the person who'd taken everything from me." Tears ran hot down her face, tracing paths through her carefully constructed composure. "I should hate you. God, Kira, I want to hate you. It would be so much easier." "But you don't," Luca said quietly. his eyes filled with a deep sadness. "But I don't," she repeated, wiping her eyes roughly with the back of her hand. "And I don't know what that makes me. Weak? Stupid? A traitor to my brother's memory?" "Human, Kira," Luca said softly. "It makes you human. I loved him so much," she whispered, the words barely audible. "He was my whole world, and you took him from me." "I know," Luca said, his voice filled with pain. "And I can't undo that. I can't look at you and not see what I cost you." "I know." She stopped, struggling to find the right words to convey the complex emotions swirling inside her. "But I also can't look at you and not see." She stopped again, the words failing her. "On that dock, when Matteo shot you, I thought you were gonna die. And I realized I'd rather carry this pain forever than live in a world where you don't exist. What does that make me, Luca?" "Brave," he whispered, his voice rough with unshed tears. "Impossibly brave. I don't feel brave. I feel broken. Then we're broken together." He finally reached for her hand, lacing their fingers together, holding on tight. "And maybe, just maybe, we can build something out of the pieces. It won't be whole. It won't be what either of us deserves, but it will be ours." Kira leaned her forehead against his chest, closing her eyes and feeling the steady thump of his heartbeat beneath her ear. "I can't promise forever, Luca. I'm not asking for forever." His arms tightened around her, careful of her healing wounds. "Just today, and then we'll see about tomorrow. And if tomorrow I wake up and I can't do this anymore, then I'll let you go." His words were filled with a solemn promise. "No strings, no surveillance, no protection you didn't ask for. I'll let you go, Kira, and I'll spend the rest of my life grateful for whatever time you gave me." They stood like that for a long moment, as the rain drummed relentlessly against the windows. Two people bound together by blood and guilt and something fragile that might someday be strong enough to call love. "He would have liked you, Kira," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Malik, he always rooted for the underdog. And God knows you're the ultimate underdog, trying to be good when everything in your blood says otherwise. I wish I could have known him. So do I." She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her eyes searching his. "Luca, I need you to promise me something. Anything. No more secrets. No more using me to win wars. If we do this, whatever this is, we do it as equals. I'm not your redemption project. I'm not your pawn. I'm just me. Can you live with that?" "Yes." He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs tracing the delicate line of her jaw. "I spent 10 years trying to be someone my father would respect. I'd rather spend the next 10 trying to be someone you can trust. That's going to be harder." "I know," he said, a sad, small smile playing on his lips. "But you're worth the hard work." She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was soft, tentative, tasting of rain and tears, and the fragile hope of new beginnings built on old graves. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. "I don't know how to do this," Kira whispered, her voice filled with uncertainty. "Neither do I." Luca rested his forehead against hers, closing his eyes. "But we'll figure it out. One day at a time." Outside, thunder rolled across the city. Inside, two broken people held each other close and dared to believe that healing was possible. 6 months later, the city looked different. Or maybe Kira was just looking at it through a different lens. Either way, New Orleans felt less like a trap and more like a blank canvas. Still scarred, still complicated, but ultimately, hers. She didn't go back to the mariner's dock. Jerome understood, though. Instead, she found work at a bookstore in the French Quarter, surrounding herself with paper and ink and stories that had nothing to do with bullets or blood. The owner was kind and understanding, the hours were reasonable, and she could walk to work without feeling like there were eyes boring into her back. Luca had kept his promise. No surveillance, no guards she hadn't asked for. He'd given her the space she needed to heal, to breathe. And slowly, painfully slowly, she'd started choosing to close that space on her own terms, in her own time. They had dinner once a week, every Tuesday night. The first month, she couldn't stay longer than an hour. She'd arrive feeling tense and on edge, leave early with a hurried goodbye, and spend the drive home questioning why she kept going back. But she did. Every Tuesday, like some sort of twisted penance or flickering hope. She couldn't quite tell which. The second month, she made it through a full meal. They talked about books, safe territory, neutral ground. He told her about a first-edition Toni Morrison he'd found at an estate sale. She almost smiled. Almost. Month 3. She let him hold her hand across the table when she told him about a particularly vivid nightmare. Just for a moment, then pulled away, but not as quickly as before. Month 4, the nightmares got even worse, more frequent, more intense. She called him at 2 in the morning without even thinking about it, her throat raw from screaming herself awake. He didn't ask her what she dreamed about, just talked about nothing in particular, the rain. A book he was reading, the stray cat that kept showing up in his garden, until her breathing steadied. She eventually fell asleep with the phone still pressed to her ear, listening to the sound of his voice. Month 5. She brought him to the youth center where Malik had volunteered, introduced him to the director, who had absolutely no idea that the anonymous donor she'd been thanking for years was standing right in front of her. Kira watched him talk to a teenager about college applications, watched him smile when the kid got excited about the prospect of engineering school, and something deep inside her chest cracked open. Not forgiveness, not exactly, but something else entirely, something akin to hope. Month 6. On a Tuesday that felt like any other Tuesday, she realized she'd gone a whole day without hating herself for feeling even the slightest flicker of happiness. The guilt would come back. It always did. But for one day, she'd chosen joy, and the sky hadn't fallen. Kira found herself spending more and more time in Luca's personal library, cataloging his vast collection, carefully organizing decades' worth of accumulated books. It was peaceful work, almost meditative in its repetition, and it allowed her to watch him, to observe him when he didn't know she was looking. She watched the way he moved through his world, the quiet authority he carried, the moments when the mask slipped and she saw the scared, haunted 19-year-old boy who was still tormented by a trigger he couldn't unpull. On the anniversary of Malik's death, Kira visited his grave alone. She brought flowers, yellow roses, his favorite, and sat on the damp grass, talking to a cold, hard headstone. "I met someone," she told him. "It's complicated, Malik. Everything's always complicated. But I think I'm going to try to be happy anyway. I hope that's okay. I hope you'd understand." The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, whispering secrets only the dead could understand. If there was an answer, it was lost in the rustling leaves, carried away on the autumn breeze. She was walking back to her car when she saw him, Luca, standing by the gate, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his shoulders hunched against the cool air. He didn't approach her, didn't call out her name. He just waited patiently, quietly. "You followed me," she said, stating the obvious. "I just wanted to make sure you were safe, Kira. But I'll go if you want me to. I will if you need me to." She hesitated for only a moment. "Stay, please." The word came easier now, more naturally than it had before. They walked slowly through the cemetery together, not touching, not even close, but near enough that their shoulders brushed with each step. At Malik's grave, Luca stopped, staring down at the headstone for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he knelt down, pressed his hand against the cold marble, and said something too quiet for Kira to hear, something meant only for Malik's ears. When he stood up, his eyes were wet with unshed tears. "What did you say?" she asked softly. Luca met her gaze. "That I'm sorry, that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn back what I stole from him, and that I'll take care of his sister if she'll let me." Kira's throat tightened, emotion closing off her airway. She reached for his hand and laced their fingers together, holding on tight. "He would have kicked your ass for getting me shot," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I know," Luca said, a small smile playing on his lips. "But then he would have helped me up." She smiled through her tears. "He was good like that, Malik. Better than both of us. Then we'll just have to try to be better for him." They stood there in the fading light, holding hands over a grave, making promises to the dead and to each other. The D'Amato Empire shifted and changed under Luca's leadership. Slowly, gradually, nothing that dramatic happened quickly, but surely and steadily he pushed the family toward legitimate businesses, cutting ties with the worst elements, and funneling money into community programs instead of lining politicians' pockets. It made him enemies, powerful and dangerous enemies. Isabella warned him constantly that he was walking a knife's edge, that he was tempting fate, but he'd already died once on that bullet-torn dock. He figured he had nothing left to lose. Kira watched him transform, not into something new or unfamiliar, but into something more authentically himself. The man who'd held her on that bullet-torn floor, desperate and breaking. The man who'd kissed her like she was both salvation and damnation wrapped in the same skin. The man who, despite everything, had chosen to be better. One evening, as the rain drummed relentlessly against the windows of his study, Luca looked up from his paperwork to find her watching him. "What?" he asked, a slight smile playing at his lips. "You've changed, you know," she said, her voice soft. "Since that night. You're softer now." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation," she replied, moving to the window and watching as the rain turned the garden into a blurry watercolor. "You know, 6 months ago, I thought I'd never forgive you. I thought the sheer weight of what you did would crush anything good that could ever possibly exist between us. And now I think forgiveness is the wrong word entirely." She turned back to face him, her expression thoughtful. "It's not about forgetting what happened, Luca, or pretending it doesn't matter. It's about choosing to build something new, something that honors the past but isn't imprisoned by it." Luca stood and crossed the room, pulling her gently into his arms. She fit there now, comfortable in the space between his heartbeat and his breath, in the warmth of his embrace. "I don't deserve you, Kira," he murmured against her hair, the words filled with a deep and abiding gratitude. "Stop saying that," she said, pulling back just enough to meet his eyes. "You don't have to deserve me. You just have to choose me, Luca. Every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Especially then." He leaned down and kissed her, slow and deep, a kiss that tasted of rain and promises and the bittersweet knowledge that some wounds never fully heal. They just eventually stop bleeding. When they broke apart, Kira rested her head against his chest, closing her eyes and listening to the steady, reassuring drum of his heart. "You saved me twice," Luca whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "On that restaurant floor and then again on the dock. I don't know if I deserved either time, Kira." "It was never about you deserving it," Kira said softly, looking up into his eyes. "It was about me choosing it. Choosing to be someone who runs toward the fire instead of away from it. Choosing to believe that people can be more than their worst moments. Even me and especially you." They stood wrapped in each other's arms as the rain hammered against the windows, a relentless rhythm that underscored their connection. The storm that had brought them together echoed in every drop, every gust of wind. But now, instead of running from it, they stood together, hand in hand, right in the very heart of it. Kira thought back to that Tuesday night 6 months ago. The shattered glass, the blood, the moment her life had irrevocably split into before and after. She thought about Malik's voice telling her she was brave, and about the stranger's eyes locking onto hers across the chaos. She hadn't just saved Luca D'Amato that night. She'd saved herself as well, giving herself permission to be more than her guilt, more than her fear, more than the small, invisible life she'd been living. And in doing so, she'd rewritten both of their stories. "Thank you," Luca said quietly, breaking the silence. "For what?" "For not running. For staying even when leaving would have been infinitely easier. For showing me that redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about facing it head-on and choosing to be better anyway." Kira smiled against his chest, the sound muffled by his shirt. "That sounds like something straight out of a book." "Well, I've been reading a lot lately, haven't I?" His arms tightened around her, holding her closer. "Someone told me that stories can teach you how to be human." Smart woman. The smartest. Outside, the rain began to ease, not stopping completely, but softening, gentling. The kind of rain that washed things clean instead of drowning them. Kira closed her eyes and breathed in the moment, savoring the scent of old books and sandalwood, the warmth of his body against hers, the sound of two heartbeats finally finding the same rhythm. She hadn't just saved a stranger that night. She'd rewritten the ending of her own personal tragedy. And in the vast space between what was lost and what was found, she discovered something completely unexpected. Hope. Not the naive, childlike kind that naively believed everything would magically be okay, but the fierce, stubborn kind that chose to build beauty from ashes, to plant flowers in graveyards, to love despite, or perhaps even because of all the ways the world had tried to break her. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance, not threatening now, just a gentle reminder of where they'd been, of everything they'd survived, of the storm that had brought them together in the first place, and the conscious choice they'd both made to keep standing together long after it had passed. Kira leaned her head on Luca's shoulder, feeling his arm come around her waist, holding her securely. "I love you," she whispered, the words barely audible. The words surprised them both, not because they weren't true, but because for the very first time they felt completely uncomplicated by guilt, by obligation, by anything other than pure, unadulterated love. Luca's breath hitched in his throat, his arms tightening around her protectively. "Say it again, Kira. I love you." Easier this time, steadier, more certain. "And I'm choosing to love you, Luca. That's the difference." What difference between being trapped, crippled by the past and building something new, something whole with it? She turned in his arms to face him, her expression earnest. "I'm not loving you despite Malik. I'm loving you because of who you've become since that day. Do you understand, Luca?" He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't even realized were falling. "I understand, Kira, that I'll spend the rest of my life trying to deserve this moment." "You already do," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. They kissed, soft and certain and free, and in the space between breath and heartbeat, between memory and hope, between the person she'd been and the person she was finally, irrevocably becoming, Kira Dalton blessedly began to heal.